This is Janet with Paper and Spark, and I'm back with part 2 of the overview of your Etsy Seller Spreadsheet. And if you're just joining us, I recommend you watch part 1, and you can purchase the Etsy Seller Spreadsheet at paperandspark.com. So let's get back to where we left off. Okay, so now we have our expenses, and our expenses for our Etsy business are divided up into 3 categories. We have selling expenses, product expenses, and business expenses. Now, our selling expenses are going to be the cost of putting your item or your service up for sale. So these are basically the third-party commissions and cuts that other sites are going to take from your sales or charge you just to sell your item. So that's going to include your Etsy listing fees, the renewal fees, the 20 cents that you have to pay them just to list your item on their site, in addition to the cut that they take every time you make a sale. That's what this green row right here is. And then we have the Etsy direct checkout percentage. So if a customer pays via Etsy's direct checkout method, then Etsy gets a cut, and that amount is going to be here. The PayPal cut, if a customer pays via PayPal, this will be the chunk that PayPal takes out of your sale. And then finally we have our postage cost, which is basically the shipping expense. This is going to be the amount for postage that you pay USPS or UPS or FedEx or whoever you're using to ship your item. This is the cost that you pay to ship to your customer. For your product expenses, we're going to have 2 little categories: direct raw materials and indirect materials and tools. Basically, your product expenses are going to be anything that you purchase to make your products. So obviously this depends greatly on what you're making and what you're selling. But, if you make purses, you sew purses, then your materials are going to be things like fabric, zippers, thread, elastic, interfacing, buttons, etc., on and on and on. Now, what's the difference between direct and indirect? A direct raw material is something that you can trace to a specific good. So if you bought zippers, then a zipper is a direct raw material because you can know the cost of that one zipper that's in that purse. Indirect raw materials and tools are going to be things that aren't really easily traceable to a specific product. So, for example, that could be your sewing machine. A sewing machine is a requirement to make your product, but you can't allocate a cost of the sewing machine on a product by product basis. You need it for all your products, right? Now, the difference between these 2 categories is not really that important for purposes of this spreadsheet. It's more important when you talk about pricing and cost of goods sold and cost of goods made. And for this spreadsheet, we're really just looking at your monthly total expenses. So we're entering your product expenses, whether direct or indirect. We're entering them just as you purchase them. We're on a monthly total basis. So if I am a jewelry designer and I'm selling pearl necklaces and I buy a bunch of pearls in January, then I'm going to enter the cost of all those pearls in January. It doesn't matter if I use them all in necklaces in that month, and it doesn't matter if I sell necklaces made with those pearls in that month. I'm just entering the expenses that I paid in that month for purposes of this spreadsheet. We're just trying to get total revenue minus total expenses right now. I hope that that concept makes sense to you. We will be having a separate spreadsheet for pricing and inventory and costing your goods sold and your goods made. And that's when it matters more on coming up with a price per item and per unit for your raw materials. But for purposes of this spreadsheet, we're just looking at your total expenses for raw materials, no matter when you use them. Okay, so moving on. Next we have the third and final category of your expenses, and that's your business expenses. This is basically where all the things that didn't fall into the other two categories are going to go. So all the other costs that your business has, whether they be for printing materials like business cards, or your web hosting fee for your blog, or the graphic designer cost for designing your logo, or the ribbon and the jewelry boxes that you ship your items in, or photo props, whatever. All those other business expenses are going to fall into this category. And this also can depend a lot on what your Etsy shop sells, what kind of business you are. So that's why we've included 3 customizable rows, again, for you to name whatever expense category makes the most sense for you. Feel free to put them here. So now that we've kind of gone through the main lines on this monthly summary tab, these numbers will get you to your net profit, which is your total revenue minus your total expenses. And finally, we have the sales tax collected line, which is not related to any of this data up here, but it does flow automatically from your blue Etsy CSV monthly tabs. So the nice thing about this is that every month, as you import your Etsy data, this line, this row will automatically generate with a sum of the sales tax that you collected in your Etsy shop from your Etsy sales that month. And when you go to pay your sales taxes, whether you do that on a quarterly or an annual basis, you can look at this tab on your spreadsheet and the data that you need will already be here. You won't need to do any extra work. You'll have what you need already there, which is great. So that's my overview of the monthly summary tab and just the different rows on your monthly summary tab of your Etsy seller spreadsheet. Stay tuned for the next video, which is going to go through the actual process of how to use a spreadsheet, how to upload and input the data that you need into this spreadsheet. Thanks!